私はさ、ルカ、お前をサポートし続けたい。隣にいて支え続けたい。それを自分の支えにしていきたいんだ。だから進んでくれ。
進む。ユッキーがそう言ってくれるなら。
よかった。
Hey everyone, welcome back to Heaven Burns Red, Key's newest visual novel that so happens to also be a Japanese-only gacha game in collaboration with Right Flyer Studio. As you might imagine, I'm about to spoil absolutely everything that happens during the story up until chapter 4, so if you are coming here and curious as to what this game is all about, feel free to check out the more general overview I did right here, link in the top right corner. Think of this as the spoiler add-on to that video. I'll be sharing my thoughts on not just the main story, but also the characters and how everything is presented. I will start from the beginning so you have time to hop out at any point if what you hear sounds interesting to you, and you would like to check it out yourself. Granted, you probably need to know Japanese, but aside from that, it's free to play on Steam, which is just about as easy access as you can possibly get. If you can't read Japanese, well then, that's exactly who this video was built for, so feel free to kick back and relax, get a drink, and listen to the story of Heaven Burns Red. For starters, let's go over the basic setting. The world is on the brink of destruction thanks to the invasion of the otherworldly beings only known as Cancer. The only one able to hurt these monsters are the female-only wielders of the weapon known as Seraph. The main characters is Kayamori Ruka, the team leader of Seraph Unit 31A, a group of 6 who, alongside the other units, 31B, 31C, 31D, 31E, 31F, 30G, and 31X, act as the last line of defense for humanity against this otherworldly menace. That's a pretty general overview of the story that you probably see just about anywhere you look online, so let's expand on that a bit. While the setting to the story is essentially a doom and gloom post-apocalyptic one, that is mostly used to contrast against Key's signature lighthearted slice of life. Almost as if they're trying to combat the bleak situation they are in, all the characters in Heaven Burns Red are surprisingly peppy. Although that's probably thanks to the influence of the main character, Kayamori Ruka, who is doing her best to poke fun at everyone and everything. While at first she looks like a cool beauty, that facade is easily dispelled at the very beginning, as she blatantly makes fun of that very concept to Izumi Yuki, ruining her dreams of what her idol is like. The relationship between Ruka and the rest of her teammates in 31A is at the core of what Heaven Burns Red is all about. Their relationship and the banter between them forms the majority of the dialogue in the game, with the other half being Ruka's relationships with members outside the core group. Our story begins at the entrance ceremony for this year's Seraph squads. Our main character, Kayamori Ruka, strikes up a conversation with her nearby neighbor, Izumi Yuki. She learns about how Yuki used to be part of Orchid, an international hacker group, while Yuki is wondering what makes Ruka so special, who admits that she just enjoys singing. While they're talking though, an alarm sounds with a warning that one of humanity's enemies, Cancer, has arrived. While Izumi is panicking, Ruka immediately answers the commander's orders, rushing out. The reason why they have been selected and what enables them to fight the Cancer is that those in the military squads are able to utilize the weapon known as Seraph. In order to access this Seraph, they are activated by shouting out a Seraphim code word. Yuki's is Hello World because that's Japan's easiest way to point out a hacker character, and Ruka's is My Legend Begins Now. Everyone's key word tends to be a representation of their inner self. I won't bother going over anyone else's as we go along, but that's a neat little factoid. After the first battle, we get introduced to the new members that showed up during the second battle. Asakura Karin, the normal high school girl who likes FPS games, and Tojo Tsukasa, the self-declared information woman. We also learn a bit about the common knowledge of how Cancer has decimated nearly the entire world at this point, leaving humanity on the brink of destruction. Commander Officer Saki then designates Ruka as the leader of Team 31A, informing that they will start training immediately. Nanase then takes the group on a tour around the base where we are introduced to the Navi, a group of blobby beings who are just bouncing around the base for whatever reason. At the base, everyone finally decides to formally introduce themselves, where Yuki is shocked to find out that Ruka is actually the former lead vocalist for the legendary rock band She Is Legend, a band that she loves. It rose in prominence many years ago, but disbanded mysteriously. Megumi also makes her first appearance here, declaring herself to be her rival from the west, the genius sidekick Aikawa Megumi. Although she acts important, everyone seems to actually be unfamiliar with her. Finally, we get Kunimi Tama, the former captain of battleship Kotetsu Maru, a girl who looks and acts like she's 12 but desperately wants to be treated like an adult. Her battleship was the only one that managed to return from the Battle of Ohoshiku-si. They then all realize they're all staying in the same room, leading to a big night of yelling back and forth as Yuki desperately tries to rein in her new rowdy comrades. A lot is established within the first 2 hours of the game. You get a good feel for each of the main characters' personalities. Yuki is the realist who is trying her best not to yell at the rest of her larger-than-life comrades. Tojo Tsukasa is a dunce who tries to pretend to be a super smart spy, but ends up being a natural airhead. Karin is a soft-spoken girl who constantly bounces between her two different personalities. One is a self-proclaimed normal high school girl, the other is a psycho murderer known as Karin-chan. Megumi is attempting to be the main rival character who tries to butt heads with Ruka as much as she can, although why she does it remains a mystery till much later, as it's not as if she wants to take the leader position or anything. Tama is pretty much the girl who tries to act older than she is, but looks and acts pretty childish as a whole. Finally, our main character Ruka is either exceedingly upbeat or completely off the wall crazy, the ratio of which dependent on the player's choices. Off the introduction alone, I think my favorite member of the cast is probably Karin. I think her split personality is a lot of fun, especially when she starts shouting out surprisingly insightful comments. We also get a good indication of a general flow of conversation for the game, which is energetic and bombastic. The voices for the characters are pretty dang nuanced with tons of pop-ins and characters yelling enthusiastically. As a visual novel, it's already decently impressive work, but as a visual novel that's in a gacha game, now that's just surprising. Anywho, the next several days of Chapter 1 are dedicated to exploring more about each of the characters through their day-to-day experiences at the base. Interspersed with all of that is training with the commander and learning more about the backstory of Cancer, the military base, and all of that. At night, each of the main characters get a bit more into their own backstories. Tama reveals that she's a designer baby, basically a child created by the government with nanomachines and stuff, which enables her to be smarter and more capable. Yuki reveals how she started as a white hat hacker, got scouted by Orchid in high school, and ended up stopping a bunch of plots, including one that could have caused World War III. Eventually, an operation went wrong and she got knocked out. When she woke up in a hospital, she was then scouted to join the fight against cancer. Megumi got psychic powers at an early age, was scouted by a psychic organization, where the leader said that Megumi would become a savior. Ruka attempts to skip over her introduction, but Yuki doesn't let that go, conveying to everyone just how big of a rock star she really was. Karin goes over her "oh, I'm just a normal girl," and Tsukasa again with her super spy stuff. A big part of bringing everyone together is Ruka finding about an abandoned music studio in the military base. Seeing this, Ruka decides to fix everything up and asks her teammate to recreate the She Is Legend band with them. While at first Yuki and the rest are a tad bit skeptical of spending so much time when they have training to contend with, they eventually all agree that it'll be a load of fun, which is the setup to practically every single vocal song that we present in the game. At the conclusion of the first period is a battle test with the commander to check if they are truly ready for the battlefield, something which they pass with flying colors. To celebrate this victory, they then finally perform the very first song that they practiced together in front of a large crowd with permission from the commander, of course. After the introductory part of the chapter, we finally make our way to the main conflict. While Team 31A is having yet another enjoyable team meal, Yamawaki Bon Ivar, captain and mad scientist of Team 31C, dubbed Waki by Ruka, comes up to the table and picks a fight with Ruka and the rest of Team 31A. For the next several days after that, Waki repeatedly butt heads with Ruka, challenging her during their first expedition and during break times to prove their moniker as the A designation, as that is usually meant for the most elite of that year's squads. Meanwhile, Ruka also learns more about Yayoi Bungo's close relationship with Waki as her self-proclaimed underling. Both of them care incredibly deeply about each other, but Waki at the same time seems to be trying to impart something onto her. All of this finally comes to a head on the 12th day when they embark on their first big operation, as a horde of cancers has been reported to be coming close to the Tokyo Dome, the place where the civilians live and the final destination that the military must protect at all costs. Waki at this point proposes a formal competition to Commander Saki, saying that whoever defeats the greater number of cancer during their expedition will be declared as the new Team 31A. At the outskirts, Ruka reaffirms with the team that rather than focus on the competition, What she wants to do is protect the people, to which everyone agrees as the vocal versions of every single battle thing up till now starts to play. As they keep going forward, dispatching every cancer they come across, they run into a gigantic cancer known as Death Slug, who has already reached close to the dome. Waki retreats, saying that they need to get reinforcements from the senpais, but Ruka decides to stay and fight, knowing that it's already too close to the dome and it might be too late once the more experienced members finally come. This leads into the big boss fight, which is accompanied by yet another 2 vocal songs, which are pretty dang good actually. After a hard-fought battle, they successfully destroy the Death Slug. While initially Waki gloats about having destroyed more cancer according to the competition, she rethinks her opinion once the child thanks Ruka for saving them, as Death Slug has actually blown up the outside wall. Waki realizes that by focusing on the competition and trying to make themselves look good, she lost sight of their true goal of protecting the people and formally accepts her defeat in front of the commander. Mari, one of the other team members of 31C at this time, decides to reveal why exactly Waki has been trying so hard to become the best. The reason is because Boon-chan has anterograde amnesia. Basically, she can't form any new memories. At this point, Yuki pops in a comment, "So that's why Bungo was like that," as we flash back to a previous scene. Waki hopes that by becoming the best, she would be able to account stronger cancer, get in contact with the best researchers, and perhaps find a way to cure Boon-chan's amnesia. This then ends with the scene of Waki crying over Boon-chan sleeping and forgetting through yet another day.
ちょうど文ちゃんが眠りにつきましたね。イバールちゃんはいつもああしてそばにいて子供のように朝まで泣くのです。
I already talked about this during my overview of Heaven Burns Red, but I think this reveal here is kind of the worst implementation of the Key formula. Key's bread and butter has always been slice of life combined with hard-hitting sad moments. The slice of life is meant to endear the characters to the reader, so that when the big drama finally hits, we feel empathy for the difficulty that the main characters have to face. Detractors of Key Studio, well actually if we're being more specific, Jun Maide's writing, would probably say that it's very formulaic. That said, when he does it well, it really does work. There's a reason why Key has become a household name over the years. Now, as for Heaven Burns Red's first chapter, the biggest reason why I think this entire reveal is terrible is just that there's pretty much no time given for establishing the conflict. Already, half the chapter is dedicated as the introduction chapter for introducing all the main characters. Waki kinda just appears out of nowhere in the latter half. This might also sound petty, but Waki and the rest of Team's 31C also get 0 CGs because the game doesn't bother to give them much screen time. With all this combined, what ends up happening is that when the Boon-chan reveal occurs, players are much more rather than incredibly invested in what's happening. While yeah, Waki crying is a sad scene, overall it ain't great. Luckily, the future chapters will do a much better job, which we'll start tackling right now. Our story continues in Chapter 2. Fresh off their big mission, Tsukasa brings up several important questions regarding themselves. One, that it's strange how everyone's seraph word seems to be linked towards himself in the first place. Chances are, since the military was able to develop these code words for them that seem to be important for each person, even if the person themselves doesn't realize why, then it's likely the military has been able to read or even manipulate their memories. Everyone remembers how they got to the academy, but not when exactly it happened. Tsukasa is also heavily concerned about her mother who has passed away. Because she was the head researcher regarding seraphs, she believes it's likely that the reason why she can't remember anything is because Tsukasa probably delved too deep into investigating her mother's death and was found out. With no leads at the moment, however, they decide to shelve this mystery for now as they go to bed. The next day, the commander informs them of their next big operation, Operation Palladius, where they will set up several pieces of equipment and to guard their construction. On their way to the gym, they run into the other main characters for the chapter, Team 31B with their leader Aoi Erika and Byako, who is a literal white tiger. Aoi is, at first glance, kind, nice, mellow, and kinda airheaded. One of her quirks is that she tends to go pokan and fade out into the distance sometimes. Byako does a good job of bringing her back though. Byaku's also shockingly friendly with Ruka, even though Aoi says that he tends to be wary around strangers. Probably the most special thing about Aoi is that she has hyperthymesia, a condition which basically gives her photographic memory where she perfectly recalls everything she has ever seen, leading to her absolutely perfect test scores, something which she tends to downplay. Over the next several days, Aoi starts to hang out with Ruka more and more as they constantly meet each other due to Operation Palladius being a joint operation with many of the other teams. Aoi and the rest of Team 31A do a bunch of things together, from playing tag with Byaku in the park, to watching movies together, shopping, all the way to even joining their band, She Is Legend. All of this helps to break Aoi out of her shell, much to the chagrin of the two sisters, Minase Ichigo and Minase Sumomo, two prior hitmen who are also Aoi's team members. These two tend to put down Aoi and come into conflict a lot with her, something which is pretty rough for Aoi as her strong personalities overwhelm her. While Sumomo just follows whatever her sister does, Ichigo is much more direct to Aoi's face, calling her out for her wishy-washiness. While Ruka is understandably annoyed at Ichigo's comments, Aoi defends some of what Ichigo says, realizing that there is some sort of truth to her statements despite her harsh way of conveying them. Out of all the operations, the standout one would have to be the one where Team 31A has to defeat the cancer known as Rotary Mo, but it always escapes before they're able to deal the finishing blow. To solve this conundrum, Ruka enlists the help of Aoi to block its escape and finish it off together, cementing their friendship even further. In the middle of all this, there is one scene with Team 31A having a feast with Bungo, which is the last time that particular story will ever be mentioned in the game. Anywho, as Aoi and Ruka gets closer and closer, Aoi reveals much of what is on her mind. How Ruka taught her how to open up her heart to others, which she has forgotten. How she was truly happy to have been given the opportunity to become a team leader, to be able to protect everyone and ensure that no one dies. How she fears that she won't be able to do that and that she'll be left alone in the end. And how she sees this nightmare every time she goes back to sleep. Much of her inferiority complex comes from that fear, something which Ruka tries to reassure Aoi that to believe in her beliefs, and if that fails, then to believe in Ruka who believes in Aoi's strength. You know, the believe in the me that believes in you Gurren Lagann. This all then culminates in a concert where they play together for the first time in a bombastic performance. After the concert, Ichigo and Sumomo finally confront Team 31A, telling them that they need to stop taking all of Aoi's attention and letting Aoi use Ruka as an emotional crutch. While Ruka is at first angry at such a statement, that's when Ichigo reveals Aoi's past, and at the reason why she's saying all of this in the first place. Aoi used to be part of Team 29, which means 2 generations before the current one, and that is when she saw something that destroyed her. Her previous team was completely wiped out in Operation Toremi, leaving her as the only survivor. That's when Ruka realizes the nightmare Aoi was talking about, how she'll be unable to protect her teammates and left alone in the end, wasn't a what-if scenario regarding her current team 31B, but rather was about her past with her other team. Thanks to her hyperthymesia, she can always perfectly recall the horror she faced at the time, something which she clearly replays to herself every day. That's the reason why she has absolutely no faith in herself and her own abilities. Ichigo tells them that when they first met as Team 31B, she could barely function and would just shake in the corner of the room. Only Byaku was able to connect with her to some extent as an animo. At that point, Ichigo and Sumomo decide that perhaps by acting belligerently and constantly trying to call out to her, that it would break Aoi out of her shell. When they were finally able to talk to some extent, that's when Ruka came in and gave her a safe space. The reason why Ichigo is telling Ruka not to do such a thing is that if Aoi can't fully believe in her teammates, then there is no point. While Ruka and Aoi can become the best of friends, they aren't on the same team, and it doesn't solve the root of Aoi's problems, that if she doesn't have faith in her new team, she won't ever truly break free from her past. At the end of their conversation, Ruka agrees to give Aoi some space, realizing how much Ichigo and Sumomo truly care about Aoi despite their thorny exterior. The next day, Ichigo yells at Aoi for blinking out once more. When Ruka tries to intervene saying that it's just her habit, Ichigo tells her that it's actually her self-defense mechanism to blink out whenever she thinks of what happened in her past.
なあ、葵！起きろ、葵！どれだけの地獄だったとしても、現実を見ろよ！そして立ち向かえ！
あなたたちは葵を置いていきませんか？
そのためには あんたの指示が必要なんだよ。引っ張っていってくれよ、私らをさ。
スモモたちの命を生かすも殺すも葵次第にゃ。
頼むぜ、部隊長さん。
はい、わかりました。葵、頑張ります。
Ichigo and Sumomo later that day also reveals that they met Aoi a long time ago during their Hitman days, and that in an operation gone bad, she ended up protecting them. When they met her again in the present and saw how messed up she was, they wanted to do their best to help her out. With all that set up, we finally reached the day of Operation Palladius. After a ton of battles, they set up a camp in the middle of the woods. Aoi and Ruka share one more scene where she thanks Ruka for everything she has done for her over the last few weeks. At dawn, they then come face to face with Red Crimson, a giant creature that's about to completely wreck the entire operation. Unfortunately, Team 31A and 31B are the only ones in place to confront it, which starts the climactic battle of the chapter. Aoi takes turns protecting everyone against Red Crimson's strongest attacks, while the others strike back. When it looks like the final blow is about to wipe everyone out, Aoi reaffirms her determination to protect everyone, throwing up her shield once more. While this completely takes her out of commission, it allows just enough time for Ruka to deliver the final blow. After the fight, Aoi talks about how happy she is to be able to protect everyone, as everyone cries about how much they really like her despite how they acted.
葵はすごいのにゃ。
全員無事だよ。だからあんたも今から治療を受けて、それでまた元気になれっからさ。私らもうわがまま言ったり迷惑かけたりしないからさ。
ちゃんと命令も聞くにゃ。
本当はあんたのこと好きだったんだ。
シュシュも心を込めて作ったんだにゃ。
だからあんたと一緒にこれからもいさせてくれよな。頼むよ。
お願いにゃ。はい、ずっといますよ。
葵。
On the ride back, Ruka bites back at the commander who congratulates them on fulfilling their duty, lamenting her inability to protect Aoi as they return back for the funeral. At the same time, we switch POVs to a slowly deteriorating Aoi who can't seem to remember who she is, or is it a Navi? Ruka tells the Navi about her regrets, as we see the funeral for Aoi. Commander Saki recounts what happens and Ichigo cries while placing a wreath over the casket. At this point, the Navi grabs the wreath, realizing that this wreath is meant for her, as his consciousness slowly fades out. Ruka says thanks to the Navi, saying that with Aoi's wreath, it almost looks like she's acting in her place, ending the chapter. So yeah, a lot happened in chapter 2. I think the central plot of Aoi, Ruka, and Team 31B's relationship is done way better than chapter 1's Waki and Team 31C. We see Ruka and Aoi develop their relationship over the 25 days, and we can clearly see the conflict she faces, especially with regards to her teammates. I won't say it's perfect. I think my least favorite part of Heaven Burns Red is also on full display during this chapter. I didn't really mention it while talking about it, but about 50% of the time spent in the chapter is dedicated to training, and I found the training to generally be forgettable filler for the most part. It's not like I don't understand its role in the game, as Heaven Burns Red is both a gacha game and a visual novel, so there needs to be gameplay portions to warrant getting more characters. Still, it's kinda boring when all you do in training is run through a bunch of sections and fight a ton of random mooks. Then at the end of the chapter, you end up doing the exact same thing. For the most part, nothing too exciting happens during these sections, although they do a good job of establishing the difficulty in communication between Aoi and Ichigo. Speaking of which, despite the fact that Higuchi and Hiragi don't get much of a role in the story, I really like how they handled Ichigo. When she confronts Ruka to stop letting Aoi use her as an emotional crutch, that's actually a pretty nuanced look at how a relationship can be positive but not necessarily good. I think both the twist of Ichigo acting villainous but actually being a good person, and the one regarding Aoi's past are both done well. Even the Pokan part, which, while it sounds ridiculous at first glance, works out way better than the whole amnesia thing. When Ichigo reveals that it's a defense mechanism, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense, as opposed to the feeling I got when Bungo's amnesia was revealed. The whole climactic battle is a great scene as well, with in-game animations for an ending fight that do an excellent job of highlighting both the scariness of Red Crimson and the sacrifice that Aoi is about to make. It's actually a very touching moment, even if Aoi was tossing death flags pretty much left and right. It's also incredibly surprising that Heaven Burns Red was willing to straight end the life of a playable character, which is honestly a fairly rare circumstance when it comes to gacha games. Usually they have some sort of in-universe mechanic to explain why the main character can still run around with said person even after they died in the storyline, or no one truly dies because how else are they going to release them as gacha characters? But yeah, Aoi does die, and outside the emotional weight of the scene, I think it sets a good precedent that the characters of the story do not all have plot armor, that the characters of Heaven Burns Red will face situations in which you don't know if everyone's gonna make it out. We also get a reveal about the true nature of the Navis, which in hindsight I think is a little premature, but does make for a great parting scene with Aoi and everyone else. It advances the overall main story and introduces the new mystery for the player to figure out. At the beginning of chapter 3, with Aoi's sacrifice still fresh in their minds, Team 31A slowly grows more suspicious regarding the military that they are working for. In order to get more information regarding what happened with Aoi, they figure that they need to talk to somebody who has experience in the older generations, with Karen-chan pointing out that the person in 30G with the scars would probably help. This person she's referring to is Tsukishiro Monaka of Team 30G, a battle-hardened veteran and the strongest Seraph user at the base. Monaka starts out by explaining to Ruka that she used to have a best friend with whom she wanted to create a cafe with, but eventually, like many of the other comrades she has over the years, she passed away. Monaka points out, however, that it's really weird that she never actually saw the dead body of her friend. No matter how much she asked to see her at the hospital, they would never let her in up until the funeral. The same exact situation that Ruka had with Aoi. Compound this with all the prior suspicions they already have regarding Tsukasa's mom passing, her missing memory, and the military potentially having some sort of memory manipulation thing, and they all agree that there are many secrets the military is hiding. Monaka and Ruka agree to meet up and share any information they find while looking into it. Meanwhile, the commander presents a new operation to everyone. Essentially, lots of camps are congregating since the defeat of Red Crimson in the previous chapter, and in order to get more information, they need to go to each location and send out scout flies to get more information. The members for the operation will be Team 31A and 30G. What's important, however, is that within the search area is Aegis Tower, an abandoned building which Commander Saki explicitly says not to enter due to the security in place, something which prompts a response from Tsukasa. When asked by the rest of the team, however, Tsukasa said that the name is vaguely familiar, but she can't figure out exactly why. Over the next several days, Team 31A goes on several expeditions to send out the scout flies. All the while in the base, they snoop around trying to ask about the secrets the military is keeping away from them. In the meanwhile, Ruka also starts to get more acquainted with Kura, another member of 30G, and someone who hopes to continue the dream that Monaka once had, to run a cafe with her. While at first it seems like she's attempting to scare off Ruka from Monaka by talking about how scary and powerful she is, it's quickly revealed that she's really just doing it because she's worried that Ruka might be getting Monaka involved in some questionable business, or the other way around. In the middle of all this, we get one last goodbye with Byako and the rest of Team 31B for Aoi, similar to the one we had in Chapter 2 for Team 31C. Again, it works a tad better than that one, although I think that's just due to how much better Aoi's entire arc is as a whole. There is a side story that goes over much of Ichigo's past and the viewpoint of the entire thing, but I won't get into it since it's not part of the main story. Anywho, yeah, the two groups basically get closer and closer together. There's a big scene with all of them at the Popotan Cafe, where they do stuff like arm wrestling and general roughhousing. There's also a surprising amount of bathing scenes throughout this chapter, multiple ones with the main characters, some with 30G, and even a completely separate bath location. As for stuff actually pertaining to the main plot, on the 14th day during the last scouting, Team 31A and 30G run into a gigantic cancer that immediately halts the final scouting location. Although as they retreat, they are forced to confront a plant-like cancer. After defeating it, they return back to base where the command decides to start a new operation, Operation Vega, in order to defeat this new threat. During practice for Phase 3, Tsukasa seems to change personalities entirely, becoming super competent and serious. She gives advice to the entire team that makes total sense and has insane battle abilities. However, after the exercise, it seems to have taken a major toll out of her as she falls unconscious. Later that day, when Tsukasa awakens, she seems to remember what has happened almost as if it was a dream, and notes that right before she swapped, she touched the necklace her mother gave to her. Yuki theorizes that during the 3 months where Tsukasa underwent examinations, that might have been the time the military manipulated her memory, and that this awakening isn't a new version of her, but rather her old personality coming back. Megami points out that perhaps everyone also has that awakening thing implanted into them, as she also went a 3-month examination. They all agree that the root of finding out the secrets behind Tsukasa's awakening ability and her mother are all hidden inside Aegis Tower. Everyone agrees to join Ruka and Monica in infiltrating it. Everyone except for Yuki, that is, who thinks it's way too dangerous. She says that as long as they don't have a clear way of disabling the security in Aegis Tower, she wants no part in the operation. Ruka decides to try and find a solution in the coming days to convince Yuki. As the days pass, the relationship between Yuki and Ruka gets pretty strained as Ruka isn't able to find a way through the security, and Yuki is still super opposed to their infiltration plan into Aegis Tower. In the meanwhile, Kura has been getting closer with Ruka as well, to the point of bringing her to her special location, a miniature garden where she's trying to grow some produce for her future restaurant business that she hopes to run with Monica. One day, after the war is over, perhaps they can live peacefully. Kura points out how the relationship where she wants to keep Monica safe, despite her strength, is perhaps the same reason why Yuki is so opposed to the operation, that she doesn't want any of them to get hurt. She also states her own participation in the Aegis Tower infiltration, as she wants to keep a watch over Monica. On the final day of practice, Yuki finally decides to lend her help and find a security hole for them to gain access to Aegis Towers. On the day of Operation Vega, they finally get their opportunity during Phase 6 to sneak off. As Yuki inputs the security key, the Aegis force field is disabled, allowing them entry. Inside the building, they came across many cancer while looking for the card key. After finding said card key, they gain access to the very top floor, which is the office of Tsukasa's mom. While at first they don't seem to find very much, by Tsukasa tracking back her memories, she remembers the secret room behind a bookshelf. Unfortunately, much of the information in the room goes entirely over their heads as the research is far too complicated for them. Luckily, inside the desk they find a picture book which Tsukasa is incredibly happy to see as it was her favorite one growing up. When she sees the final page, however, it shocks Tsukasa to the core as she screams out loud. A moment later, she awakens once more as she states that she has now remembered everything. She doesn't have time to explain though, as a gigantic cancer Flathead has started attacking the tower. Their attempt to escape via elevator is cut short as the Flathead, which had apparently vanished, has attacked them from far away. Tsukasa points out that it is probably one much closer as they are assaulted by another Flathead, starting the pivotal boss fight of the chapter. At first it looks like the battle is going pretty well. The team even manages to handle the second form it busts out after the first life bar is gone. Unfortunately, once it activates its third form, the entire team is helpless as they are unable to even scratch Flathead despite all their attacks. None of their attacks seem to reach it no matter what they do. Tsukasa realizes after testing some pot shots that this third form of Flathead has actually warped space itself. While it looks like it's in front of them, it's actually in a separate space that shifts. Tsukasa then tells Monica to reveal her trump card that she's been hiding, that there's no way the performance she's showed thus far is what gave her the moniker of the strongest Seraph user. Monica begrudgingly agrees to unleash it, telling Kura to please protect everyone as she pretty much goes god mode, instantly one-shotting the Flathead and collapsing afterwards. While everyone is super impressed by Monica, Kura stops Ruka from picking up Monica as she goes completely berserk. The other Flathead at this point has noticed them, cutting their time short to put Monica down. Unfortunately, all of them are completely spent after the fight. Kura decides to put her life on the line to stop Monica herself as she doesn't want her to face more of a trauma of being the only survivor after going berserk. The battle ends with Monica skewering Kura just as she regains her consciousness.
夢はこれから叶う。死んだセラフ部隊員がどうなるか確かめられるよ。
違う、そんなもの夢ではない。我の仲間の生死を知りたかっただけだ。だが我はここで死ぬことを選んだのだ。こんな結果だけは望んでいなかった。どうして置いていってくれなかった。
生きていてほしいと思っただけさ。どこまでもあたいは月城ちゃんに惚れ込んでいたようだね。一方的な片思いだったけどね。
Monaca then confesses to Kuda, saying that her love wasn't one-sided. After she had found out the truth about her comrades, she had always planned on telling her that she would run the restaurant with Kuda. Kuda, hearing about her feelings reciprocated, smiles as she passes away in Monika's arms. There, she dreams of the fields of wheat she wished she could have grown. After the credits, that's when the big reveal happens as Kuda's dead body morphs into a Navi, with Tsukasa revealing the truth that everyone at the base is actually a Navi. Chapter 3 is quite an interesting chapter. It simultaneously does a better job than any of the previous ones, but it also is where I think Heaven Burns Red starts to drag a bit as well. If anything, a lot of it seems almost like a rehash of Chapter 2. Both the training for Operation Vega and the whole go to location A, release scout flies, head back is incredibly monotonous. Kudo's ultimate sacrifice at the end is a wonderful scene, but it's also pretty similar to how they set up Aoi's entire situation. Now, as for what Chapter 3 does really well, the cutscenes, especially during the final boss, has been upped considerably, making for a much more exciting experience. They also finally advanced the plot in a meaningful way, with the main characters finding a big secret regarding the military base and themselves. Granted, the impact of the secret is far lessened for the player, as they basically already revealed that fact with Aoi at the end of Chapter 2. Still, it doesn't change how hard this reveal will hit our main characters, as they have to come to terms with what they know now. And I think with that reveal is where I will stop this story overview. Initially, I was going to cover the entirety of Heaven Burns Red's current content in one video, but one main thing stopped me, and that was the fact that only part 1 of Chapter 4 is currently out. I can safely say that Chapter 4 Part 1 is easily the best the game has to offer. It really forces a lot of growth out of all the main characters, it has a ton of cutscenes, and there isn't nearly as much training to bog down the story beats, giving it a much better pacing. I plan on waiting till Chapter 4 Part 2 comes out so I can talk about it as a complete story. With that said, if enough people are interested, I can cover each section in its own separate video. Here's a quick preview of what happened in Part 1, so you can yell at me in the comment section if you want to hear more about it. Chapter 4 picks up exactly where Chapter 3 leaves off. While everyone is absolutely lost at words with this revelation, the commander comes to bring everyone in, telling them that despite the secrets she withheld from them, she doesn't want to come clean now that the cat's out of the bag. There's quite a few revelations in the conversation which I won't get into, but suffice to say, learning about the fact that everyone is not really a person but rather a Navi throws the entire Team 31A into a massive depression. Chapter 4 does an absolutely amazing job of actually giving many of the characters in Team 31A some meaningful development, something which has been kinda lacking in the previous chapters. While everyone comes to terms with many of their inner demons, Megumi is probably hit the hardest as we learn more about her past, and why she has a dream to become the savior of the world. That's all I'll say for now. Again, I plan on covering Chapter 4 Part 1 and 2 together, as I imagine that's when it'll form a much more complete story, but if anyone's interested about hearing it separately, feel free to tell me in the comments below and maybe I'll do that instead. Heaven Burns Red also has a ton of side stories as well, which gives much more perspective on many of the other teams. Overall, while they do a good job of rounding out the other squads who don't tend to get much screen time in the main story, they're also pretty short as a whole, and my summary of each one would probably end up being like 3 minutes long. A lot of it is based on each character running into a conflict regarding themselves and hearing their thoughts. You lose a lot of that when you contract 30 minutes of back and forth into like 3, but again, if anyone's interested, I can try to figure out a more entertaining way to talk about it. Anywho, that'll be it for this one. If you gotten this far, all the supported stuff, like, subscribe, notifications are in the same place as always. If you got anything you want to say about Heaven Burns Red's story, the comment section is down there as well. I'll see you later. Till next time.